News 12 Sports.
Welcome to Double Overtime with Maury Hirschcord. I'm Yanni Crocus. All right, we're talking college hoops. Sox making a big trade. Celtics and Tom Brady and the Bucks. Yep. Brady had a good day yesterday. We'll see if he and the Bucks can repeat next year. All right, URI and PC both played yesterday. Providence beat UConn at home. I liked when Ed Cooley said Providence was desperate. They were in desperation mode. URI lost at St. Louis. Based on where we are this week and the results of last night, what is the status of these two right now?
Yeah, well, let's first touch on PC. They beat UConn. Same spot as last year. They're 500 right now.
Were they in this dire strait this time last year?
So I believe they were 13-12 overall and 6-6 in the league and won the last 6 to finish 19-12 and 12-6. So now they're 10-10 and 6-8.
Okay.
So there's 2 more games in the Big East this year. So the best they can be is 12-8.
Right.
Last year they were 12-6. But 12 wins was the most Big East wins they ever had in program history. Can they do that? They could. I mean, they can go beat St. John's, not get swept. They can beat a Georgetown team who they still have, who they lost the first game to. Nova at home. They always, play well at home against top competition. Excuse me. The next 2 games I think are the toughest. At DePaul, a team that doesn't really get a lot of credit, that hangs in close games, and you're on the road. And then at UConn, Dan Hurley is going to want to come back and not get swept by Ed Cooley. And then James Bouknight seems to potentially, be there and be ready. So I think this PC team just has to take it one game at a time. We talked to Noah Horkler after the game yesterday, and he said it's all about buying in. It's, the lessons he learned last year, winning the 6 games toward the end of the season was, you got to make the better play for your teammate. You got to create an open shot. And those things compile one after another in hopes to win games. And they can't look past the next game on their schedule or else their NCAA tournament chances will be squashed. Right now, they're on life support.
It's wild how streaky this program has been in recent years. Like you mentioned the streak last year. I don't remember them being in obviously I remember the late run that got them into tournament position, but yeah, they've done well. I'd love to see their record in mid-February into early March of their PC runs, and I think it was, Duke had 17 yesterday. He rebounded a little bit from his rut, but he wasn't outstanding. But for them to win without him having his A game, I think is a good sign. And yeah, I wonder if not having a COVID pause, will their resume, whatever it ends up looking like, will it benefit them having played more games? How are they going to be judged? They're going to have more losses, but they may have more wins because they played more games. I'm just thinking out loud here. Because Ed Cooley keeps telling us it's not going to be fair whenever it happens, when it gets to March. But I think if they can keep winning, they have a shot. Yeah. And we've seen them be streaky enough, including with many of the guys on this team and last year, that they can do it. So, but one game at a time, as all the coaches like to say. URI's lost 4 in a row.
Yep. St.
Louis was always going to be a tough game last night on the road. Clearly, Fats is still hurt. Turnovers is the thing you harp on the most. But I thought David Cox, in the little bit I heard last night post-game, because it was going on right during our news, he didn't seem particularly discouraged. Now, maybe he's just being upbeat to rally his guys. But after 4 straight wins, I thought he was in pretty good spirits. But it seemed like he was happy with the defensive effort. But what was the downfall last night then?
Yeah, I think the downfall was offensively. And I know K-Mac was on this past Sunday, and you were talking a little college hoops there, and he brought up a good point about maybe sitting Fats the rest of the season. And I asked David Cox this after the loss at Dayton. I said you have to think at first about maybe managing his minutes, but maybe now at this point it's like, hey, what is even the benefit to winning a couple games? Sure, it gives you momentum going into the tournament, but you have to win 3 or 4 games in March. And the scary thing is, as bad as Rhode Island has played, they have the talent. If they can play 160 minutes, first off, they have to start with 40 straight good minutes. But if they can play 160 minutes, they're as talented as any team in the A-10. Maybe St. Louis and St. Bonaventure are a step up, but they showed if they're within a couple possessions of St. Louis, maybe a couple extra shots on your end and a couple misses on their end, and then it's a completely different ballgame. So I think you have to start to think about Fats Russell shutting down for a couple weeks in hopes of then the last 4 games in March, because there's no other reason to play and to win these couple
it comes down to the A-10 tournament. Obviously, you want to be one of those top seeds, so you only have to play 3 games. But if you got to play 4, you got to play 4. Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think they're as talented enough of a team as any team in the A-10 that they could roll those off. So But as Bill Koch tweeted at me last night, because I was wondering, about Fats' health, there's no time between now and March where he's going to really improve.
Right.
He's got the plantar fasciitis, and he's got the core issue. So,
yeah.
But if they can just get it together for March, I know that's a lot to ask, but like last year, a couple games prior to the end of the season, they were still in contention for at-large, sort of puttered out.
Right.
And then we thought they had to win in Brooklyn, and then there was the dangerous Dayton team that was top 5 or 10 in the country, so you knew that was going to be sort of a long shot. But with it being more wide open this year.
And last year, Jeff Doughton's ankle was bothering him big time, but he played through because they had a chance to potentially win the regular season and get that at-large bid. This year, it's just completely different. If they were in that spot, I think Fats plays and Cox wants him to play. This year, it's just completely different. You're already out of it. Right now, they're in 10th place in the Atlantic 10 out of 14 teams. So
what is the, tell me your rotation that you mentioned in the article that you want. Is it 8 or 9 guys total?
It depends. You have to feel it out. Like last night, Mikal Mitchell picked up his 3rd foul early in the second half. Then you have to go to a Jermaine Harris. But I think right now, the starting 5 was good last night. They made a tweak. It's Fats Russell, Jeremy Shepard, Ish Leggett. Ish Leggett plays a little bit bigger than his size, a little bit bigger bodied. And then the forwards are Antoine Walker, Mikal Mitchell to start. And then I think you bring in a Malik Martin, even though offensively he hasn't been great. I think just defensively, team first guy, culture guy, that is so important, at any point in the season, let alone when you're trying to get back on track after losing 4. And then you sprinkle in DJ Johnson, who's around a 40% three-point shooter. And then you have depth pieces. B-Tran can get hot, but if he's not making shots, there's no reason to have him in because he can't play great defense. Jermaine Harris is a filler if Antoine Walker and or Mikal Mitchell get in foul trouble, and then Jalen Carey's your last gasp. 12 assists to 42 turnovers. It's better off just holding the ball and passing it back to your teammate than trying to do anything. They'd be in better position.
That's your boy, Coos guy.
No longer.
All right, let's switch gears. Red Sox making a trade last night. Long been rumored, but sending Andrew Benintendi, part of a 3-team deal to Kansas City. He was going to make about $6 million this year, then eligible for arbitration. So I have 2 thoughts on this. The first is I get that like Chaim Bloom comes in here, Tampa Bay Rays methodology of he's going to sort of restock the cupboard and build from the ground up and have the infrastructure there to make the Red Sox good sustainably. It's been such a roller coaster for the last 7 or 8 years. First place ever since 2013. First place, last place, first place, World Series win, no playoffs, disaster last year. So bettering the farm system, making it more sustainable. But then it's just like from another, so I get all that. But like he's 26 years old. He stunk last year. His stats went way down. But are you giving up on him too early? Like at the end of the day, you don't know if any of your prospects or young guys or players to be named later, in this case in the trade, are going to amount to much of anything anyway. So why not just keep the 26-year-old left fielder who's coming off a bad year-and-a-half stretch? And my other larger point is it's just so disappointing then when you look back at the magical 2018 and you see all the videos and GIFs on Twitter of Benintendi Betts and JBJ dancing at the end of every game because all those guys were in their 20s and had such a bright future ahead of them for the Red Sox as cornerstone pieces, and now they're all gone unless JBJ re-signs, which apparently is a possibility now. Of the 3 of those guys, for him to be the lasting one is wild. And then when you look at the Sox roster, I think there's only 6 players left from the 2018 team. So just how quickly it's all come apart. But if Chaim Bloom, coming from the Tampa Bay Rays, can sort of wipe the floor clean and build anew, in a couple of years, I think it'll pay off. But the other thing is, from a PR perspective, baseball's already in trouble right now. Can Red Sox fans during a pandemic, all sports ratings are down across the board. For whatever reason during a pandemic, I don't know, people are being more allocating their time differently or figuring out I don't need to watch sports or whatever the case may be. The Red Sox are going to be losing some money in advertising, clearly without fans and maybe with the Nets and television ratings. So I'm not saying go out there and spend like a drunk sailor, but I don't know. You sort of need to field a somewhat competitive team. I don't know if this market is in for a 2-3 year rebuild. So just the trading of a young, promising player, it just further illustrates that the Sox are in a slow rebuild here.
Oh, I'm with you. I mean, you saw what the ceiling was with Benintendi. 270 career hitter. That's solid in the outfield, in today's day. He had a 290 average, had a great 2018 season. You're allowed to have a hangover season, right? You saw what he could be, and then he only had like 38 or 39 at-bats last year in a season that, sure, it counted, but then was shut down and was hurt. And then and then this year you bring back Alex Cora, the manager who he played well underneath.
Sure.
So then maybe, you can strike a little something there between the two, and he just feels the comfort of having a manager who he won a World Series with back in tow. But then the other aspect is you don't bring in a guy like Chaim Bloom and not let him run the show how he wants.
Right.
Because then, A, you don't need somebody in that job, or two, just hire somebody that you can pull the strings for. So if you want Chaim Bloom to get your baseball team back on track and get back to the playoffs consistently, then you have to let him run the show. You have to give him, like a head coach, you have to give him 3 or 4 or 5 years to prove, his method works. And he needs to stick to that. He only knows the Tampa Bay Rays method, and that's to kind of tear down, build up from the depths of the minor league system, and then hopefully those guys rise. I'm a believer in trading for established players instead of players to be named later, guys that have done it on the biggest stage, have made the biggest catches like Benintendi, but that is obviously not what Chaim Bloom, that's not his style. That's not kind of how he came up through.
Verdugo is the only full-time outfielder who's not like a platoon guy on the roster right now. We'll see if JBJ comes back, but it's God, it could. At least he's being honest. I think he was asked last night, do you expect to be a playoff team? And he says, I expect to compete for one, but I know that'll be an uphill battle, something to that effect.
Yep.
So 19, 20, 21, this could be 3 postseasonless years in a row for the Red Sox.
I know it's mid-February, but it feels like baseball season's still so far away.
Yeah, it does, on the heels of football. So let's talk basketball then. Celtics 2-3 on their West Coast trip. I believe they host the Raptors as we tape this on a Thursday. Jaylen Brown missed a couple games, or a game. Kemba Walker's got the knee. He's been struggling. Are you worried? Is this team good enough? Is the roster good enough? Let's say if Kemba continues to sort of struggle here to compete in the East, or they just, hey, they're a 4 or 5 seed, maybe make it to the Eastern Conference semis. Obviously, Brown and Tatum have been great, but other than that, is the roster good enough?
I think it's good enough to compete. It's not good enough to get them over the top right now, but I'm not concerned how they performed, out west. When they went out west for those 5 games, you have a couple back-to-backs. And you knew the competition level that you're going to face. A Kings team that's upstart, that's going to give you a battle every night. A Suns team that has gotten better with the leadership of Chris Paul. And then the Clippers series. The Clippers and Celtics have played the best basketball in the last couple of years with all their matchups. So another classic went down there in LA, and the Celtics pull one out. So they were 2-3, which is good. They come back east they're still above 500. So they didn't go 1-4. They didn't go 0-5. And now there's some winnable games on the schedule that they must win now. If you get back to me in 2 weeks and they kind of falter right here, then maybe I start to worry. But they were 2-3. They held their ground. They're back at 12-11. And now they really have to start to win some games to separate themselves, because if you're not in the top 4 in the East, then 5 through 8 or 5 through 9 is usually separated by a couple games. And then you can be the 5 seed one week and then have one bad week, and all of a sudden you're on the outside looking in.
Right. Yeah, and in terms of some of the new guys on the roster, Pritchard, the rookie, has been nice. But Jeff Teague started out okay, hasn't done much recently. And then Tristan Thompson, I think he's been disappointing. Apparently he and Daniel Tice are both sort of on the market, but I don't think the supporting cast is quite good enough. Brown and Tatum are good enough to get them into a playoff run, but they're not championship caliber right now. All right, let's finish with Brady and the Bucks. Tom Brady's throwing Lombardi trophies on boats and getting visibly hammered last night. I think everyone was happy to see that, since we know how disciplined he is with his eating and drinking throughout the year. All right, so there's a reason why NFL teams don't repeat. It hasn't happened since 03 and 04 with Tom Brady and the Patriots. Everyone always talks about the disease of more. Once you win a title, everyone wants their individual contracts, accolades, more catches, more touches. We've done the team thing. Let's do the individual thing. They have a lot of free agents. Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, Antonio Brown, I think Shaq Barrett. Fair amount, but they sort of have good infrastructure. They have Brady. They have a lot of good pieces. I think he's experienced this, so he sort of knows what it takes. Are they going to be in the mix to repeat next year?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I think the biggest reason why is because 2 losses on their regular season record this year were to the Saints, and I think they pick up 2 wins there. So I think automatically when you win the division and you're a top seed, you're getting home games in the playoffs, you're in better position, you potentially have a chance for the bye. I haven't been a Packers fan, in terms of just them continuing to be this good without really committing to top pieces around Aaron Rodgers. I think if Rodgers slips a little bit, those pieces aren't good enough to keep him afloat. So I don't see the Packers being the runaway number 1 seed next year. So I think, can the Bucs repeat? There's no doubt about it. I mean, you're going to have more of an off season this year. You're going to have a preseason schedule. You're going to be able to work out together. So now that we're in year 2 of the pandemic, sort of going into the off season with the NFL, everybody knows how to handle it more.
Right.
And I think this Bucs team, without a doubt, I think is the favorite in the NFC. For sure to get back.
Yeah, I think they'll get back. I don't know if they'll win it. I think it'll probably be the Chiefs and the Bucs again next year.
I would take that.
But Tom Brady is not one to be satisfied with just winning a Super Bowl. He wants to get back. They won in 16, lost in 17 to the Eagles, but then came back and won in 18.
Yep.
So he's been on both sides of that. But for the reasons you just mentioned, off-season, more time together, Brady's going to be calling up his receivers in 2 weeks and be like, let's get out there and start throwing passes. And they improved as the season went on. After their Week 13 bye, they didn't lose a game. They won 8 straight. So I think they'll be a better regular season team. I think they win the division, they get the bye, the home games, all those things that help you get to a Super Bowl. I mean, it's 360 days away, but I don't think they'll win it next year. I'll pick the Chiefs, but I think they'll get back there. So good shape. And, we know Brady's in the last year of his deal. I assume they'll extend him at least 1 year, so get him 2 more years. But it's wild to think, what if they win 2 and 3 years? Yeah. Then you were sort of joking the other day in the office. You were like, oh, Brady in the Hall of Fame as a Patriot or Buck? Ha, ha, ha. If he gets 2 with Tampa, he's not going in as a Buck over the Patriots after 20 years and 6, but it's more in the conversation.
Oh, no doubt.
In the obit, in the Wikipedia page, it's creeping up into the second paragraph.
Former New England Patriot and Tampa Bay Buccaneer. It's not just like New England Patriot played with the Bucs. If he gets to 2 or 3 Super Bowls and wins 2, then you start to look at how does that little time frame compare to early dynasty in New England and the second dynasty in New England.
Yeah. He's had essentially, this is like his 3rd career.
Yeah.
There was the first 10-year dynasty, second 10-year, and this is going to be, let's say he plays 3-4 years. But Manning played 5 years with the Broncos. That felt like enough time to say the Broncos was a big part of his.
Yeah.
Went to 2 Super Bowls, won 1. He only went to 1 with the Colts,
right,
and won it against New Orleans. So it's not going to be as big of a footnote or as small of a footnote, the Bucs' tenure, if they continue to get back. And
for sure.
And just wild. It's wild to say, and I tweeted this out the other day. It was the 2014 draft, which is coming up on 7 years, when Bill Belichick first brought up Brady's age. And you can't fault Belichick. At the time, 37 was old for quarterbacks. No one else had played, whether it was Montana or Manning or Elway, no one had played well into their 40s. There had never been a case study. You would have hoped Belichick would have been like, this guy is so special, he's going to buck the trend. But he treated Brady like every other player and got out early instead of late, and now Brady's proving him wrong. So
Brady's helping Aaron Rodgers. If Brady continues to do it. The Packers drafted Jordan Love, sat this season. Hey, Tom Brady's doing it at 42, 43, 44, 45. Rodgers is a spring chicken.
Russell Wilson says he wants to play to 45, and as long as they're healthy, the way the game's officiated now, they're not getting crushed like they used to.
Nope.
But you have to love the game enough. Some of these guys don't love it enough.
Right. But I think Russell, even Brady's in a category of his own. Then I think Wilson is kind of behind him, and then Rodgers I think below. I think Rodgers loves the game, but he also loves to talk. He loves the media. He loves himself.
Well,
more so than Brady and Wilson.
I think what all aging athletes tell you is the game day is the fun part. It's the other 6 days of the week, or it's the off season where you have to put the time in. That's what you're committing to when you're playing the next year.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff. That'll wrap up this episode of Double OT. You can watch us on WPRI.com, listen to the podcast, and check it out on social media. We'll see you next time.